Born into the glittering luxury of America's Gilded Age and elevated to the highest circles of the British Empire, Mary Curzon became one of the most famous women on earth. She was more than a wealthy heiress. She became the face of imperial elegance in colonial India, admired by royalty, feared by rivals, and remembered as one of the most influential dollar princesses in history. But behind the jewels, the ceremonies, and the breathtaking gowns was a woman trapped between power, politics, and impossible expectations. How did a young woman from Chicago rise to become the most celebrated vicereine of India? And why did her story end in tragedy at only 36 years old? This is the extraordinary story of Mary Curzon, the American heiress who conquered the British Empire. Mary Victoria Leiter was born on May 27, 1870 in Chicago during one of the most explosive periods of industrial growth in American history. Railroads, factories, and department stores were transforming the nation, and Mary was born directly into that rising world of unimaginable wealth. Her father, Levi Ziegler Leiter, co-founded Marshall Field & Company, one of the most successful retail empires in the United States. His fortune elevated the Leiter family into the elite circles of American society. Eventually, the family moved to Washington, D.C., where Mary grew up surrounded by politicians, diplomats, and international visitors. Unlike many wealthy young women of her era, Mary received an unusually refined education. She studied literature, history, philosophy, French, and German under private tutors and governesses. She quickly developed a reputation for intelligence as much as beauty. By the time she entered elite social circles in Washington, London, and Paris, newspapers described her as graceful, poised, and quietly magnetic. But Mary belonged to a generation of women who became known as the dollar princesses, American heiresses whose fortunes helped rescue struggling European aristocratic families. Many were admired, some were mocked, but Mary Curzon would become something very different. She would become a political symbol of empire itself. In 1895, Mary married George Curzon, one of the most ambitious politicians in Britain. Curzon was brilliant, aristocratic, and deeply obsessed with the future of the British Empire. Unlike many titled Europeans seeking American money, Curzon saw Mary as more than a fortune. He saw intelligence, discipline, and social instinct, qualities that perfectly matched his political ambitions. Their marriage became an international sensation. To many observers, the union symbolized a merging of two worlds, America's rising industrial wealth and Britain's ancient imperial power. But life with Curzon was not easy. George Curzon was demanding, perfectionist, and intensely driven. Mary, however, proved far stronger than many expected. Behind her calm elegance was a sharp political mind and an extraordinary ability to navigate elite society. She mastered British aristocratic customs without losing her American confidence, and soon became one of the most admired women in Britain. Then, in 1899, everything changed. George Curzon was appointed Viceroy of India, the highest-ranking official in the British Raj, and Mary Curzon was about to become a living legend. When the Curzons arrived in India, Mary immediately captivated both British and Indian society. As vicereine, she technically held no formal political power, but in the world of empire, image was power, and Mary understood that perfectly. She became the glamorous public face of British rule in India. Portraits from the period show her dressed in extraordinary jewels and embroidered gowns, always appearing calm, regal, and impossibly composed. But Mary was not simply playing dress-up for empire. She studied Indian culture, supported hospitals and educational programs for women, and took a genuine interest in the traditions surrounding her. Still, her role existed within the larger machinery of colonial rule, a system built on hierarchy, domination, and spectacle. And nowhere was that spectacle more dramatic than the Delhi Durbar of 1903. The event celebrated the coronation of Edward VII as Emperor of India and was designed to demonstrate the overwhelming power of the British Empire. Princes, soldiers, aristocrats, and dignitaries gathered beneath enormous tents in one of the grandest imperial ceremonies ever staged. And at the center of it all stood Mary Curzon. She wore what became known as the peacock dress, one of the most famous gowns in history. Created by the House of Worth in Paris and embroidered by Indian artisans, the dress shimmered with gold and silver thread inspired by the feathers of a peacock. Tiny metallic details reflected light with every movement. It was not just fashion, it was political theatre. The gown symbolized the fusion of British imperial power, American wealth, and Indian craftsmanship. When Mary entered the durbar wearing the dress, witnesses described the moment as unforgettable. She did not merely look elegant, she looked imperial. Today, the peacock dress survives in Field Museum, where it remains one of the most iconic surviving symbols of the British Raj. Although women held little official authority in the empire, Mary Curzon became enormously influential behind closed doors. She understood something many politicians ignored. Power often flowed through conversation, ceremony, and personal relationships. Mary hosted lavish receptions that doubled as spaces for diplomacy and negotiation. Every detail, from seating arrangements to clothing to guest lists, carried political meaning. She also supported hospitals, schools for girls, and charitable programs for women in India. While these efforts reflected the paternalistic attitudes common within the British Empire, they also demonstrated Mary's genuine commitment to social causes. Privately, George Curzon relied heavily on her judgment. Many contemporaries believed she softened his harsher instincts and helped him navigate delicate cultural situations he might otherwise have mishandled. In many ways, Mary Curzon became an unofficial political partner, not through laws or speeches, but through influence. Then, suddenly, it was over. By the early 1900s, Mary's health had begun to deteriorate, weakened by repeated illnesses, surgeries, and the physical strain of multiple pregnancies. In 1906, at only 36 years old, Mary Curzon died in London following complications from surgery. Her death shocked Britain and India alike. George Curzon was devastated. Friends later said he never fully recovered emotionally from losing her. He referred to Mary as his North Star and continued speaking about her for the rest of his life. Today, Mary Curzon remains one of the most fascinating figures of the imperial age. She embodied both the glamour and contradictions of empire, luxury and inequality, beauty and political power, admiration and colonial domination. More than a century later, her story still endures because Mary Curzon was never just a decorative aristocrat. She was a woman who learned how power truly worked and mastered it in a world that rarely allowed women near it.